Chapter 1. The night we stumbled upon the rusted hatch in the forest floor. Have you ever walked into a place and felt it was waiting for you? Like the air itself was holding its breath, watching your every step? That's how it felt the night we found the hatch. We didn't know it then, but that rusted piece of metal buried in the dirt would change everything. I'm getting ahead of myself, though. Let me take you back to how it started, to that cold autumn evening when the five of us thought we were just out for a hike. We were a tight-knit group, the kind of friends who'd been through thick and thin since college. There was me, Emma, the one always trying to keep everyone calm; Lucas, the skeptic who laughed off anything spooky; Mia, the curious one who'd poke her nose into anything mysterious; Ethan, the anxious type who overthought everything; and Sophie, the fearless one who'd charge into danger without a second thought. We'd decided to spend a weekend camping in the Blackwood Forest, a sprawling stretch of pines and shadows about an hour's drive from our city. It was supposed to be a break from work, from life, from everything. Just us, a campfire, and the stars. But Blackwood had other plans. The forest was dense, the kind of place where the trees seemed to lean in, their branches tangling overhead like they were trying to block out the sky. The air smelled of damp earth and pine needles, with a faint sour tang that I couldn't quite place. We'd been hiking for hours, our boots crunching through leaves, our breaths puffing in the chilly air. The sun was dipping low, painting the forest in shades of gold and shadow, when Sophie stopped dead in her tracks. "Guys, look at this," she said, her voice sharp with excitement. She was crouched near a cluster of roots, brushing dirt off something metallic. We gathered around, our flashlights cutting through the growing dusk. It was a hatch, rusted and half-buried, its edges caked with soil. It looked old, like it had been there for decades, maybe longer. The metal was pitted, with faint scratches that might have been letters, but they were too worn to read. A heavy padlock hung from the handle, its surface mottled with corrosion. "What the hell is that doing out here?" Lucas asked, his brow furrowed. He was always the first to question anything out of the ordinary, like he could logic his way out of the unease creeping up our spines. "Maybe it's an old storage shed," Mia suggested, her eyes gleaming with curiosity. She reached out to touch the hatch, but Ethan grabbed her wrist. "Don't," he said, his voice tight. "We don't know what it is." "Could be dangerous," Sophie snorted, standing up and brushing dirt off her knees. "Dangerous? It's just a hatch, Ethan. Probably leads to some farmer's root cellar or something." But it didn't feel like a root cellar. The air around the hatch was colder, heavier, like it was leaking something from below. I noticed it first, the way my breath caught, the way the hairs on my arms stood up. I shone my flashlight on the ground nearby and saw faint, uneven tracks in the dirt, like something had been dragged to or from the hatch. They were old, half erased by time, but they made my stomach twist. "Let's open it," Sophie said, already tugging at the padlock. It didn't budge, but the metal groaned, a low, mournful sound that seemed to echo from below. "Are you crazy?" Ethan snapped, stepping back. "We're in the middle of nowhere, it's getting dark, and you want to mess with some creepy trapdoor?" "Exactly," Mia chimed in, siding with Sophie. "We're in the middle of nowhere. Who's gonna know? Come on, don't you want to see what's down there?" I could feel the group splitting, the tension rising. Lucas was shaking his head, muttering about how we should just keep moving to the campsite. Ethan was practically vibrating with nerves, his flashlight beam jittering across the trees. But Sophie and Mia were relentless, their curiosity like a fire that wouldn't go out. And me? I just wanted us to stick together. I didn't like the hatch, didn't like the way it seemed to hum faintly under my feet, but I also didn't want to leave my friends to do something stupid alone. "Fine," I said finally, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. "But we do this carefully, and if it feels wrong, we stop." Sophie grinned, already pulling a multi-tool from her backpack. The padlock was old, brittle, and after a few minutes of her prying, it snapped with a dull crack. The sound was too loud in the quiet forest, like a bone breaking. We all froze, waiting, listening. The wind had stopped, and the trees were silent, their shadows stretching long and thin across the ground. Sophie lifted the hatch, the hinges screaming in protest. A gust of cold air rushed up, carrying a smell like whetstone and something sharper, almost metallic. Our flashlights pierced the darkness below, revealing a set of concrete stairs descending into the earth. They were narrow, uneven, coated in a thin layer of grime. The walls were rough, carved straight into the rock, and they glistened faintly, like they were sweating. "Whoa," Mia whispered, leaning forward. "This isn't a root cellar. This is something else." "Looks like a bunker," Lucas said, his skepticism wavering. "Maybe from the Cold War or something." "Then why is it out here, unmarked?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "And why does it feel like it's waiting for us?" Nobody answered. We stood there, our beams of light trembling in the dark. Then Sophie took a step forward, one foot on the first stair. "I'm going down," she said, her tone daring us to argue. "Sophie, don't," I said, grabbing her arm. But she shook me off, her eyes locked on the darkness below. "I'll be quick. Just a peek." Before anyone could stop her, she was descending, her flashlight bobbing with each step. Mia followed, then Lucas, muttering under his breath. Ethan hesitated, looking at me like I could make this all stop. But I just nodded, and we followed, our footsteps echoing in the tight space. The air grew colder as we went down, the walls closing in. The smell was stronger now, that metallic tang mixing with something sour like decay. The stairs seemed to go on forever, far deeper than any bunker should. My chest tightened, my pulse loud in my ears. I kept expecting Sophie to call out, to say she'd found something, but she was silent, her flashlight a faint glow ahead. After what felt like an eternity, the stairs ended in a narrow corridor. The walls were concrete now, cracked and stained, with patches of mold creeping up like veins. There was a door at the end, heavy and metal, with a small, grimy window. Sophie was already there, peering through the glass. "What do you see?" I asked, my voice shaking. She didn't answer right away. Her flashlight was pressed against the window, illuminating something beyond. When she turned to us, her face was pale, her usual bravado gone. "There's a room," she said. "It's empty, but there's something on the walls." We crowded around the door, our flashlights shaking. Through the window, we saw a small, circular chamber, its walls covered in scratches, deep, frantic marks that looked like they'd been clawed into the concrete. They weren't random. They formed shapes, patterns, symbols I didn't recognize, but that made my skin crawl. In the center of the room was a single chair, rusted and bolted to the floor, its surface stained with something dark. "What the hell is this place?" Lucas whispered, his voice cracking. Before anyone could answer, the air shifted. It was subtle at first, a faint vibration under our feet, like a distant machine humming to life. Then we heard it, a low, rhythmic sound like breathing, coming from somewhere deeper in the bunker. It wasn't human, not quite. It was too slow, too heavy, like the earth itself was exhaling. "We need to go," Ethan said, his voice high with panic. "Now," but Sophie was staring at the door, her hand on the handle. "There's something else," she said, almost to herself. "Something calling. Sophie, no!" I grabbed her, but the door creaked, like it was moving on its own. The breathing grew louder, closer, and our flashlights flickered, casting wild shadows on the walls. For a moment, I thought I saw something in the glass, a shape, tall and wrong, watching us from the other side. We ran. We scrambled up the stairs, our footsteps pounding, the air thick with that sour, metallic smell. The hatch slammed shut behind us, the sound echoing through the forest. We didn't stop until we reached our campsite, our breaths ragged, our flashlights dim. The forest was silent again, but it didn't feel empty. It felt alive, watching, waiting. We didn't sleep that night. We sat around the fire, jumping at every rustle, every snap of a twig. The hatch was still out there, buried in the dirt, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd woken something up. Something that knew we were here. Have you ever felt eyes on you in the dark, even when you're sure you're alone? Chapter 2. Our flashlights revealed stairs, descending deeper than they should have. Have you ever stood at the edge of something dark and felt it pulling you in? Not just curiosity, but something deeper. Like a whisper in your bones telling you to step forward even when every part of you screams to run. That's what we felt the morning after we found the hatch in Blackwood Forest. We'd barely slept, our eyes bloodshot, our campfire reduced to embers. The memory of that breathing sound, that wrong shape in the bunker's window, clung to us like damp air. We should have packed up and left. But something about that hatch wouldn't let us go. I'm Emma, by the way, and I'm still trying to make sense of what happened. Our group, me, Lucas, Mia, Ethan, and Sophie, was fraying at the edges. Lucas kept saying we'd imagined it, that the breathing was just wind in the trees. Ethan was a wreck, jumping at every sound, muttering about how we'd disturbed something. Mia was sketching the symbols we'd seen on the bunker walls, her pencil scratching furiously in her notebook. And Sophie? She was quieter than usual, Her usual fire dimmed, her eyes fixed on the path we'd taken last night. The path back to the hatch. The forest felt different in the daylight. The pines were still dense, their needles carpeting the ground, but the air was thick with a musty, almost coppery smell, like old pennies left out in the rain. The sun barely reached us through the canopy, casting long, jagged shadows that seemed to shift when we weren't looking. We'd agreed to break camp and head home, but as we packed, Sophie spoke up, her voice low. "We need to go back," she said, not looking at us. "To the hatch. Are you out of your mind?" Ethan snapped, his backpack half-zipped. "We almost died last night, Sophie. Whatever's down there, it's not our problem. It is now," she said, her eyes meeting his. "You felt it, Ethan. We all did." "That thing, it saw us," Lucas scoffed, but it was weaker than usual. "It was just a creepy old bunker. Probably some abandoned military thing. We're not ghost hunters." Mia looked up from her sketches, her fingers smudged with graphite. "Those symbols weren't military," she said. "They looked ritualistic, like something carved to mean something. We need to know what." I wanted to agree with Ethan, to grab my stuff and run, but I couldn't shake the image of those claw marks, that chair bolted to the floor. What was that place? Why was it hidden out here? Against my better judgment, I nodded. We go, we look, we leave. No messing around. The walk back to the hatch felt shorter, like the forest was guiding us. The air grew colder as we approached, the sour tang stronger, mixing with the scent of wet earth. The hatch was there, just as we'd left it, its rusted surface glinting faintly in the dim light. The broken padlock lay in the dirt, and those drag marks I'd noticed last night seemed fresher, deeper, like something had been here since we'd run. Sophie knelt beside the hatch, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the handle. "Ready?" she asked, but it wasn't really a question. Before anyone could answer, she yanked it open. The hinges screamed again, and that same cold metallic air rushed up, stinging our faces. Our flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing those concrete stairs, slick with moisture, descending into the earth. "They go too deep," Ethan whispered, his beam shaking. "Bunkers aren't supposed to be this deep." "Only one way to find out," Mia said, stepping forward. Sophie followed, then Lucas, his jaw tight. Ethan and I exchanged a look, but we couldn't let them go alone. We descended, our footsteps echoing, the walls pressing closer with every step. The stairs were wrong. They kept going, far beyond what made sense. 10 steps, 20, 30, my legs ached, and the air grew heavier, like we were sinking into a pool of cold syrup. The walls were rougher now, almost jagged, with faint scratches that caught the light. The smell was overwhelming, a mix of rust and something organic like rotting leaves but sharper. My flashlight flickered and I heard Ethan gasp behind me. "Emma, you see that?" he whispered. I followed his beam to the wall, where a faint, hand-shaped smudge stood out against the grime. It was too big, the fingers too long, like it had been left by something pretending to be human. "Keep moving," Lucas called from ahead, his voice strained, but even he sounded shaken now. The stairs finally ended in that same narrow corridor from last night, the concrete walls veined with mold. The metal door was still there, its grimy window dark. But something was different. The air hummed, a low, steady vibration that made my teeth ache. And the door, it was ajar, just a crack, like someone had left it open for us. "Wasn't it closed last night?" Mia asked, her voice barely audible. Sophie didn't answer. She stepped forward, pushing the door open. It groaned, revealing the circular chamber we'd seen before. The claw-marked walls, the rusted chair, the stains on the floor. They were all there, but now the symbols seemed to glow faintly, pulsing in time with the hum. My stomach churned as I realized they weren't random. They formed a pattern, spiraling inward toward the chair, like a map leading to something. "There's another door," Sophie said, pointing to the far wall. I hadn't noticed it last night, a smaller hatch, set low, almost hidden by the shadows. It was rusted like the one above, but its surface was etched with more symbols, deeper and more deliberate. Mia knelt to sketch them, her hands shaking. "Don't touch it," Ethan said, his voice high. "We need to leave now." But the hum grew louder, and the air thickened, pressing against my chest. Then we heard it again, that breathing, slow and heavy, coming from behind the new hatch. It wasn't just a sound now. It was a presence filling the room, making the walls feel alive. Our flashlights flickered again, and for a split second, I saw something in the shadows. A tall, thin shape, its edges blurred, standing near the chair. Did you see that? I gasped, grabbing Lucas's arm. He shook his head, but his face was pale. Nothing's there, Emma. It's just the light. But Mia was staring at the new hatch, her pencil frozen. It's moving, she whispered. And she was right. The hatch was trembling, like something was pushing against it from the other side. The breathing grew louder, rhythmic, almost like a chant. My ears rang and my vision blurred, the symbols on the walls seeming to writhe. Sophie took a step toward the hatch, her eyes glassy. "It wants us to open it," she said, her voice not quite her own. "Sophie, stop," I shouted, lunging for her. But the hatch creaked open before she could touch it, revealing another set of stairs descending even deeper. The air that rushed up was freezing, carrying a stench like burnt hair and blood. Our flashlights barely penetrated the darkness below, but I swore I saw movement. Something slithering too fast to track. The breathing stopped. The silence was worse. It pressed against us, heavy and expectant. Then, from the depths, came a single word, whispered in a voice that wasn't human. "Come." We ran. The stairs seemed endless, our lungs burning, our flashlights failing one by one. The walls felt closer, the scratches sharper, like they were reaching for us. When we finally burst through the surface hatch, the forest was dark, the stars gone. We collapsed, gasping, the hatch slamming shut behind us. Back at camp, we didn't speak. Mia clutched her sketches. Ethan rocked back and forth, and Sophie stared into the fire, her face unreadable. Lucas tried to laugh it off, but his hands shook. The forest was too quiet, the air too heavy. We'd seen something down there, something that knew us. And those stairs, they went deeper than they should have. What's waiting at the bottom of a place like that? Chapter 3. The walls were covered in messages, written by someone who knew us. Have you ever seen your name written somewhere it shouldn't be? Not just graffiti or a coincidence, but something personal, something that feels like it was meant for you alone. That's what we found in the bunker beneath Blackwood Forest, and it's why we couldn't just walk away. After 2 nights of running from that rusted hatch and those impossible stairs, we were exhausted, frayed, and haunted by what we'd seen. But the worst was yet to come. The forest wasn't done with us, and neither was whatever lived below. I'm Emma, still trying to hold our group together. Me, Lucas, Mia, Ethan, and Sophie. We were a mess. Ethan hadn't slept since the breathing started, his eyes sunken, his hands twitching. Lucas kept pretending it was all in our heads, but his usual smirk was gone. Mia was obsessed, filling her notebook with sketches of those eerie symbols, muttering about patterns. Sophie was the worst. She barely spoke, her gaze distant, like part of her was still down there with that voice that whispered, "Come." And me? I was terrified, but I couldn't let us fall apart. Not yet. We'd planned to leave at dawn, to drive back to the city and never look back. But as the sun rose, weak and pale through the pines, Sophie stood up, her sleeping bag still zipped around her. "We have to go back," she said, her voice flat. "We left something down there." "Left what?" Lucas snapped, tossing a stick into the dying fire. "Our sanity? Because that's long gone." "Answers," Mia said, not looking up from her notebook. "Those symbols, they're not random. They're a message. And that voice, it knew us." Ethan shook his head, his voice cracking. "It's a trap, Mia. You saw that thing in the shadows." "You heard it. It's not human." But Sophie was already packing her flashlight, her movements mechanical. "You don't get it," she said. "It's not about what we want. It's about what it wants." I wanted to scream, to drag them all to the car. But deep down I felt it too, that pull, like a hook in my chest, tugging me back to the hatch. The forest was quieter today, the air heavy with that same coppery sour smell like blood and decay mixed with pine. The trees seemed to watch us as we trekked back, their branches clawing at the sky. The hatch was there, unchanged, its rusted surface glinting like it was waiting. We opened it, the hinges shrieking, and that cold, metallic air hit us again, sharper this time, like a blade against our skin. Our flashlights cut through the dark as we descended those concrete stairs, each step echoing like a heartbeat. The walls were slicker now, the scratches deeper, and I swore I saw new ones. Long, jagged lines that hadn't been there before. Ethan's breathing was ragged, and I grabbed his hand, squeezing it to keep him grounded. The stairs ended at the corridor, the metal door still ajar. The hum was back, low and pulsing, vibrating through the floor. We pushed into the circular chamber, the claw-marked walls glowing faintly with those strange symbols. The chair was still there, rusted and stained. But the smaller hatch on the far wall, the one that had opened last night, was closed again. Its etched symbols dark and still. Mia knelt by the wall, tracing a symbol with her finger. "These aren't just carvings," she said. "They're words, a language maybe, but it feels alive." "Alive?" Lucas scoffed, but his voice wavered. "It's just a bunch of scratches, Mia. You're losing it." "Then explain this," Sophie said, her flashlight aimed at the wall above the chair. We followed her beam and my blood ran cold. There, carved into the concrete, were our names. Emma, Lucas, Mia, Ethan, Sophie, etched in jagged, uneven letters, like they'd been clawed by desperate hands. Below them were words, fragmented and strange. "You were chosen. You will stay." Ethan stumbled back, his flashlight clattering to the floor. No. That wasn't here last night." "It can't be. It knows us," Mia whispered, her eyes wide. "It's been watching us." I forced myself to step closer, my heart pounding. The letters were fresh, the edges sharp, like they'd been carved hours ago. My name, Emma, had a strange symbol next to it, a spiral with a slash through it, like a warning. I reached out, my fingers hovering over the carving, and the air grew colder, the hum louder. My flashlight flickered, and for a moment, I thought I saw the letters shift, like they were rewriting themselves. "We need to leave," Ethan said, his voice barely a whisper. "This place, it's playing with us." But Sophie was staring at the smaller hatch, her flashlight steady. "There's more," she said. "It's calling again." Before we could stop her, she crossed the room and yanked the hatch open. The air that rushed out was freezing, thick with that burnt hair and blood stench. The stairs beyond were narrower, steeper, descending into a darkness our flashlights couldn't touch. The walls were different here, smooth, almost polished, but covered in more carvings. Not just symbols now, but messages, sentences, scrawled in the same frantic hand. "You brought us here. You can't leave. It sees you. Who wrote this?" Lucas demanded, his voice echoing. "This is insane. Someone's messing with us." "No one's been down here," Mia said, her flashlight shaking. "Look at the dust. It's undisturbed. They're new." I followed her beam and saw it. A sentence carved low on the wall, near the stairs. "Emma will fall first." My knees buckled, and Lucas caught me, his grip tight. "It's just a trick," he said, but he didn't sound convinced. The hum grew into a low growl, and the air pulsed, like the bunker was breathing again. Then we heard it, a scraping sound, slow and deliberate, coming from the stairs below. It wasn't footsteps. It was something heavier, dragging, like claws on stone. Our flashlights flickered, and the shadows seemed to twist, forming shapes that weren't there a moment ago. Tall, thin figures with two long limbs, their edges blurring into the dark. "Run!" I shouted, my voice breaking the spell. We scrambled back through the chamber, past the chair, past our names on the wall. The scraping followed, growing louder, closer. The door slammed shut behind us as we reached the corridor, the sound like a gunshot. We didn't stop, climbing the stairs two at a time, our lungs burning, our flashlights failing. The walls seemed to pulse, the scratches moving, forming new words we didn't dare read. When we burst through the surface hatch, the forest was dark, the sun gone. We collapsed in the dirt, gasping, the hatch slamming shut with a force that shook the ground. The air was still, but that coppery smell lingered, clinging to our clothes. Back at camp, we sat in silence, our fire barely aglow. Mia clutched her notebook, the pages filled with sketches of symbols and our names. Ethan was shaking, his eyes darting to the trees. Sophie stared at the ground, her hands clenched. Lucas tried to speak, but his words died. Those messages, they weren't just threats. They were personal, like the bunker knew us, our fears, our secrets. And that spiral next to my name? I'd seen it before in Mia's sketches, in the shadows of my dreams. What does it mean when something underground knows who you are? Chapter 4. We heard breathing in the darkness. Where no one was standing. Have you ever heard a sound that shouldn't exist? Not just out of place, but wrong, like it's coming from somewhere it physically can't? That's what we heard in Blackwood Forest, deep in that bunker beneath the rusted hatch. By now we were beyond scared. We were unraveling. Our names carved on those walls, those messages that seemed to know us, had burrowed into our minds like splinters. We couldn't leave, not anymore. The forest, the hatch, whatever was down there, it had us, and it wasn't letting go. "I'm Emma," and I'm barely holding it together for our group. Me, Lucas, Mia, Ethan, and Sophie. Ethan was a ghost of himself, his eyes hollow, muttering about the spiral symbol next to my name. Lucas was clinging to denial, insisting it was all some elaborate prank, but his voice shook. Mia was consumed, her notebook a chaotic map of symbols and scrawled notes, her fingers stained with ink. Sophie was the worst. She was distant, almost trance-like, as if something had followed her up from those stairs. And me? I was terrified, but I couldn't let us break. Not yet. We tried to leave that morning, packing our gear in silence, the forest pressing in around us. The air was thick with that sour, coppery smell like blood and rust, and the pines seemed to lean closer, their shadows jagged. But as we reached the trailhead, Sophie stopped, her backpack slipping from her shoulder. "We can't," she said, her voice low. "It's not done with us. Sophie, enough." Lucas snapped, his hands clenched. "We're going home." "This is over." "It's not," Mia said, flipping through her notebook. "Those messages. You will stay." "It's not a suggestion. It's a command." Ethan's voice was barely audible. "It knows my fears. It knows I'm scared of the dark." "How does it know?" I wanted to scream, to drag them to the car, but that pull was back, that hook in my chest, tugging me toward the hatch. It was like the bunker was alive, whispering our names. Against every instinct, we turned back, our footsteps heavy, the forest too quiet. The hatch was waiting, its rusted surface gleaming faintly, the drag marks in the dirt sharper, like something had been there while we were gone. We opened it, the hinges screeching like a warning. The cold, metallic air hit us sharper now, laced with that burnt hair stench. Our flashlights barely cut through the dark as we descended the concrete stairs, each step echoing in the tight space. The walls were slick, the scratches deeper. Some forming words we hadn't seen before. "Stay. Watch. Listen." My heart pounded as I saw that spiral symbol again, etched repeatedly like a signature. The stairs ended at the corridor, the metal door ajar, the hum louder now, vibrating through my bones. We pushed into the circular chamber, the claw-marked walls pulsing with faint light. Our names were still there, carved above the rusted chair, but new words had appeared. You hear it now. The smaller hatch on the far wall was open again, its dark stairs descending deeper, the air thick with that foul smell. "We shouldn't be here," Ethan whispered, his flashlight trembling. "It's watching us." "Then why do you keep coming back?" Sophie asked, her voice sharp, almost accusing. She was staring at the open hatch, her eyes glassy. Mia knelt by the wall, sketching frantically. "These symbols, they're changing. They're telling a story. We're part of it." Lucas grabbed her shoulder. "Mia, stop." "This isn't a puzzle to solve. It's dangerous." But before anyone could argue, it started. A low, rhythmic sound, like breathing, coming from the open hatch. It was the same sound we'd heard before, but closer, heavier, like it was right behind us. Our flashlights flickered and the air grew colder, pressing against my skin. I swung my beam around the chamber, but no one was there. Just us, the chair, and those glowing symbols. "Where's it coming from?" Ethan hissed, backing toward the door. "It's everywhere," Sophie said, her voice calm, almost reverent. She stepped toward the hatch, her flashlight aimed down the stairs. "It's calling us." "Sophie, don't." I grabbed her arm, but she pulled free, her eyes locked on the darkness below. The breathing grew louder, slower, each inhale like a rasp, each exhale a low growl. My flashlight caught something on the stairs, a faint smudge, like a footprint, but too long, too thin, like it belonged to something that didn't walk right. Mia's pencil stopped. "It's not just breathing," she said, her voice trembling. "It's saying something." I strained to listen, my ears ringing. The breathing shifted, forming sounds that weren't quite words but felt like they should be. It was like a language I couldn't understand, yet it twisted in my gut, like it was speaking directly to me. "Emma," it seemed to say, the sound curling around my name. I froze, my breath catching. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my voice shaking. Lucas shook his head, but his face was pale. "You're imagining it. It's just air in the pipes or something." But Ethan was shaking. His flashlight dropped, its beam rolling across the floor. It said my name too. It said Ethan. The breathing stopped. The silence was worse, heavy and thick, like the air was holding its breath. Then from the darkness of the hatch came a single deliberate scrape like claws on stone. Our flashlights died, plunging us into black. I fumbled for my light, my hands shaking. But before I could find it, the breathing started again, right beside me, where no one was standing. I screamed, stumbling back, crashing into Lucas. "It's here!" I shouted, my voice echoing. The others were shouting too, their voices overlapping, panicked. Someone grabbed my arm, Sophie, I think, and pulled me toward the corridor. But as we ran, I felt it, a presence, cold and heavy, brushing past me in the dark. It wasn't just air. It was solid, fleeting, like fingers grazing my skin. Our flashlights flickered back on as we reached the stairs, their beams weak and jittery. The walls were alive with new scratches, fresh words carved in jagged lines. "You hear us now. You belong here." My name was there again. The spiral symbol larger, its slash deeper, like it was marking me. The breathing followed us, echoing up the stairs, growing louder, angrier, like we'd offended it by running. We burst through the surface hatch, collapsing in the dirt, the forest dark around us. The hatch slammed shut, the sound like a thunderclap. We scrambled to our camp, our fire long dead, the air thick with that coppery stench. Ethan was sobbing, Mia clutching her notebook like a lifeline. Sophie sat apart, staring at the trees, her face unreadable. Lucas tried to speak, but his words were hollow. That breathing, it wasn't just a sound. It was alive, personal, like it knew our fears, our secrets, and it was still with us, even now, in the way the forest seemed to watch, the way the air felt too still. Have you ever heard something in the dark that felt like it was speaking to you? Chapter 5. An abandoned control room showed footage of us entering before we arrived. Have you ever seen something that made you question your own reality? Not just a trick of the light, but something that rewrites what you know to be true. That's what happened to us in Blackwood Forest, in the depths of that cursed bunker beneath the rusted hatch. We'd heard the breathing, seen our names carved into walls, felt something watching us, something that knew us. Each trip down those stairs stripped away another layer of our courage, our sanity. But what we found next, it broke something in us we couldn't fix. I'm Emma, still clinging to the hope I can keep our group, me, Lucas, Mia, Ethan, and Sophie, from falling apart. Ethan was barely functioning, his eyes darting, his hands shaking like he expected the dark to grab him. Lucas was quieter now, his skepticism cracked, his usual bravado replaced by a tense jaw. Mia was lost in her notebook, sketching symbols and muttering about connections we couldn't see. Sophie was the worst. Her fire was gone, replaced by a cold, distant stare like she was listening to something we couldn't hear. And me? I was terrified, but I had to hold us together. I had to. We hadn't slept. The forest was too quiet, the air thick with that sour, coppery stench, like blood and rust mixed with pine. The trees seemed to lean in, their shadows twisting in ways shadows shouldn't. We'd packed our gear again, swearing to leave, but Sophie's voice stopped us, low and certain. "It's not letting us go," she said, her eyes fixed on the path to the hatch. "We need to know why." "Know what?" Lucas snapped, his voice raw. "That we're losing our minds?" "That place is a death trap, Sophie." Mia looked up, her notebook trembling in her hands. "The symbols, they're changing every time we go down. They're telling us something. We can't just walk away." Ethan was shaking his head, his voice a whisper. "It knows my name, Mia. It knows I'm scared." "It's not just symbols, it's alive." I wanted to agree with Lucas, to drag us all to the car and never look back. But that pull was stronger now, like a current dragging us back to the hatch. Against every instinct we went, our footsteps heavy, the forest watching. The hatch was there, its rusted surface glinting, the drag marks in the dirt fresher, deeper, like something had been moving while we were gone. We opened it, the hinges screaming, and that cold metallic air hit us, laced with that burnt hair and blood stench. Our flashlights flickered as we descended the concrete stairs, the walls slick with moisture, the scratches sharper, forming new words. "You see us now." My name was there again, the spiral symbol larger, its slash like a wound. The air was heavy, the hum louder, vibrating through my chest. The stairs ended at the corridor, the metal door wide open now, like an invitation. We stepped into the circular chamber, the claw-marked walls pulsing faintly, our names still carved above the rusted chair. The smaller hatch was open, its dark stairs descending deeper. But something was different. A faint glow came from the right, where a narrow passage branched off, one we hadn't noticed before. It was barely wide enough to walk single file, its walls rough and damp, etched with more symbols. "Where does that go?" Ethan whispered, his flashlight shaking. "Only one way to find out," Sophie said, her voice flat. She led the way, and we followed, the passage so tight our shoulders brushed the walls. The air grew colder, the smell sharper, like decay and ozone. The hum was deafening now, a low growl that made my teeth ache. The passage opened into a small concrete room, its walls lined with dusty control panels, their buttons cracked and faded. A bank of monitors, dark and silent, sat against one wall, their screens coated in grime. A single chair, rusted like the one in the chamber, faced them. The air was thick, the hum pulsing like a heartbeat. Mia ran her fingers over a panel, wiping away dust. "This looks like a control room," she said. "But for what?" Lucas pressed a button, and the monitors flickered to life, their screens glowing a sickly green. Static crackled, then cleared, showing grainy footage of the forest above. We saw the hatch, the trees, the dirt. Then the footage shifted and my blood ran cold. It showed us, me, Lucas, Mia, Ethan, Sophie, approaching the hatch, our flashlights cutting through the dusk. It was the moment we'd found it 2 nights ago. "That's impossible," Lucas said, his voice shaking. We didn't see any cameras. The footage looped, showing us opening the hatch, descending the stairs. But then it changed, showing us entering the bunker again, in daylight, wearing the same clothes we had on now. I looked down at my jacket, my boots, then back at the screen. It was us right now, but we hadn't reached the control room yet in the footage. "How?" Ethan's voice broke. "How is it showing this? We're here now. We didn't come here before." Mia was frozen, her notebook slipping from her hands. "It's not just recording us, it's predicting us." Sophie stepped closer to the monitors, her face pale. "It's watching us," she said. "It always has." The footage shifted again, showing the circular chamber, the claw-marked walls, our names. But now there was something else, a shadow, tall and thin, its edges blurred, standing behind us in the footage. I spun around, my flashlight sweeping the room, but nothing was there. The hum grew louder, and the air pulsed, the monitors flickering. Then we heard it, the breathing, slow and heavy, coming from the walls, the floor, everywhere. "It's here," Ethan whispered, backing toward the passage. But the monitors changed again, showing the passage we'd just walked through, now blocked by that same shadow, its limbs too long, its movements jerky, like a puppet. The breathing became words, faint and garbled. "You see us. You stay." I grabbed Mia's arm, pulling her toward the passage. "We're leaving now." But as we turned, the monitors showed us running, us, right now, in this moment, fleeing the control room. The shadow was closer, its form clearer, its eyes glinting in the footage. My flashlight died, then Lucas's, then Mia's. Sophie's beam held, but it was weak, trembling. We ran, the passage tighter now, the walls scraping our arms. The breathing followed, louder, closer, like it was right behind us. The scratches on the walls moved, forming new words. "You cannot leave." My name was there, the spiral symbol glowing, its slash pulsing like a heartbeat. We reached the circular chamber, the chair now turned to face us, as if it had been waiting. The hatch to the deeper stairs was wide open, the darkness below alive with movement. Something scraped, slow and deliberate, climbing toward us. We didn't wait, we bolted for the corridor, the stairs, the surface. Our lungs burned, our flashlights failed, the breathing echoing in our ears. When we burst through the hatch, the forest was pitch black, the stars gone. The hatch slammed shut, the sound shaking the ground. Back at camp, we collapsed, our fire dead, the air thick with that coppery stench. Mia's notebook was gone, lost in the bunker. Ethan was silent, his eyes vacant. Sophie sat apart, whispering to herself, her words too soft to hear. Lucas stared at the trees, his hands clenched. That footage, it wasn't just watching us. It was ahead of us, like the bunker knew our every move before we made it. What do you do when something sees your future? Chapter 6. The air grew thick with voices that didn't belong to the living. Have you ever heard a voice that wasn't there? Not in your head, but in the air, so real you could feel it crawl across your skin? That's what we faced in Blackwood Forest, in the depths of that cursed bunker beneath the rusted hatch. We'd seen our names carved into walls, heard breathing where no one stood, watched footage of ourselves doing things we hadn't done yet. Each trip down those stairs took something from us, our hope, our reason, our grip on reality. By now, we were shadows of ourselves, but the bunker wasn't done. It was waiting, and it was speaking. I'm Emma, barely holding our group together. Me, Lucas, Mia, Ethan, and Sophie. Ethan was crumbling, his eyes hollow, his hands trembling like he could still hear that breathing. Lucas's denial was gone, replaced by a quiet, haunted look, his skepticism shattered by that control room footage. Mia was frantic, mourning her lost notebook, her fingers twitching like she was still sketching those symbols. Sophie was the worst. She was slipping away, her eyes distant, her voice soft, like she was answering something we couldn't hear. And me? I was drowning in fear, but I had to keep us moving, keep us alive. We sat around our dead campfire, the forest silent, the air heavy with that sour, coppery stench, blood, rust, and something fouler. The pines loomed, their branches clawing at the sky, their shadows twisting in ways that made my skin crawl. We'd tried to leave again, but Sophie's words stopped us cold. It's talking now, she said, staring at the path to the hatch. It wants us to listen. Listen to what? Lucas asked, his voice sharp but unsteady. There's nothing out there but trees in that damn bunker. Mia hugged her knees, her eyes red. It's not just the bunker. It's alive. The symbols, the footage, the breathing. It's all connected. It's trying to tell us something. Ethan shook his head, his voice a whisper. It's not telling us anything. It's trapping us. It knows my fear is my name. It's going to kill us! I wanted to scream, to run, to burn the hatch and the forest with it. But that pull was stronger than ever, like a chain around my heart, dragging me back. The bunker knew us, saw us, predicted us. We couldn't leave, not until we understood why. So we went back, our flashlights trembling. The forest too still, the hatch waiting like an open mouth. The hinges screamed as we opened it. The cold metallic air rushing up, thick with that burnt hair and blood stench. The concrete stairs were slicker now, the scratches on the walls sharper, forming words that seemed to writhe. Listen. Stay. No. My name was there, the spiral symbol larger, its slash glowing faintly like it was alive. The hum was louder, a low growl that pulsed through my bones. We reached the corridor, the metal door wide open, the circular chamber beyond glowing faintly. Our names were still carved above the rusted chair, new words beneath them. You hear us now. The smaller hatch to the deeper stairs was open, its darkness alive with faint movement. But the passage to the control room called to us, its narrow walls etched with fresh symbols, glistening like they were wet. We squeezed through, the air colder, the smell sharper, like decay and ozone. The control room was the same, dusty panels, cracked buttons, the bank of monitors dark and silent. But the chair was turned, facing the passage like someone had been sitting there, waiting. Mia touched a panel, her fingers shaking. It's still warm, she whispered. Like it's been used. Lucas pressed a button and the monitors flickered on, their green glow casting eerie shadows. The footage showed the forest, the hatch, us descending, moments from our first night, our second, our now. But then it shifted, showing the chamber, the chair, and us standing there, right now, staring at the screens. A shadow loomed behind us, tall and thin, its edges blurred. I spun around, my flashlight sweeping the room, but nothing was there. Then the voices started. They were faint at first, a murmur in the air, like a crowd whispering just out of earshot. The hum faded, replaced by words, fragmented, overlapping, not quite human. Emma, stay! Lucas, see, Mia, no. They came from the walls, the floor, the monitors curling around us like smoke. The air grew thick, heavy, like it was pressing us down. My flashlight flickered, and I saw it. A faint shape in the corner, blurred, like it was made of shadow and static. Who's there? Ethan shouted, his voice breaking. The voices answered, louder now, chanting our names in a rhythm that matched the breathing we'd heard before. Ethan. Fear. Sophie. Listen. Sophie stepped forward, her eyes glassy. They're talking to me, she said, her voice soft, almost reverent. They've always been talking to me. Sophie, stop. I grabbed her arm, but she pulled free, walking toward the monitors. The footage changed, showing her standing alone in the chamber, the shadow closer, its limbs too long, its eyes glinting. The voices grew louder, sharper, forming sentences. You brought us here. You belong to us. Mia was shaking, her hands empty without her notebook. It's the symbols, she said. They're not just carvings. They're voices. They're alive. Lucas slammed his fist on a panel, the monitors flickering. This is insane. It's just tech, old wires, some trick. But the voices didn't stop. They grew louder, angrier, filling the room until my ears rang. My flashlight died, then Ethan's, then Lucas's. Sophie's beam held, but it was weak, trembling. The air was suffocating, the voices now a chorus, chanting, "You see us. You hear us. You stay." I felt something brush my arm, cold and solid like fingers made of ice. I screamed, stumbling back, crashing into Mia. The monitors showed us running right now. Through the passage, the shadow following, its form clearer, tall, thin, its face wrong, like a mask of static. The voices followed, echoing in the passage, the walls pulsing with new scratches. "You are ours." My name was there, the spiral symbol glowing, its slash like a scream. We reached the chamber, the chair now facing the smaller hatch, its darkness alive with scraping sounds like claws climbing closer. We ran for the corridor. The stairs, the surface, the voices chasing us, our names woven into their chant. The walls seemed to close in, the scratches forming new words. Never leave. Our lungs burned, our flashlights failed, the air thick with that foul stench. When we burst through the hatch, the forest was black, the stars gone, the hatch slamming shut like a coffin lid. We collapsed at camp, our fire dead, the air heavy with that coppery smell. Ethan was sobbing, Mia was silent, her hands empty. Sophie sat apart, whispering, her words not her own. Lucas stared at the trees, his face pale. Those voices, they weren't just sounds. They were alive, personal, like they'd been waiting for us all along. And they were still here, in the silence, in the shadows. What do you do when the dead speak your name? Chapter 7. We unlocked a chamber that held something preserved. Far too long have you ever opened a door you knew you shouldn't. Not because of rules or warnings, but because every fiber of your being screamed it was wrong. That's what we did in Blackwood Forest, beneath that rusted hatch, in a bunker that knew our names, our fears, our every step. The voices, the breathing, the footage showing us before we arrived. They'd broken us down, piece by piece. We were no longer explorers, no longer friends. We were prey, and the bunker was the hunter, drawing us deeper with every visit. But what we found in that chamber, it wasn't just wrong. It was something that should have stayed buried. I'm Emma, clinging to the last threads of our group. Me, Lucas, Mia, Ethan, and Sophie. Ethan was a shell, his eyes vacant, his whispers about the voices constant. Lucas's defiance was crumbling, his hands shaking, his logic failing against the impossible. Mia was unraveling, her lost notebook a wound, her mind racing to decode symbols she could only half remember. Sophie was gone, not physically, but her soul. She moved like a puppet, her eyes locked on some unseen point, her voice soft with words that weren't hers. And me? I was drowning in dread, but I had to keep us alive, even if I didn't know how. The forest was suffocating that morning, the air thick with that sour coppery stench, blood, rust, and decay, heavier than ever. The pines loomed, their branches like claws, their shadows twisting into shapes that vanished when I looked directly. We'd packed our gear again, swearing to leave, but Sophie's voice cut through, low and certain. "It's not done," she said, staring at the path to the hatch. "It wants us to see." "See what?" Lucas snapped, his voice raw. More shadows. More voices. "We're done, Sophie. We're leaving." Mia shook her head, her hands trembling. "The symbols. They're a map, a story. We're part of it now. We can't leave until we understand." Ethan's voice was barely audible. "It's going to kill us. It knows my name, my fears. It's waiting." I wanted to run, to drag them to the car, but that pull was a chain around my heart, tighter now, dragging me back to the hatch. The bunker wasn't just alive, it was personal, like it had chosen us. We trekked back, our flashlights dim, the forest silent, the hatch waiting like a trap. The drag marks in the dirt were fresh, deep, like something heavy had been pulled across the ground. The hinges screamed as we opened the hatch, the cold metallic air rushing up, thick with that burnt hair and blood stench. The concrete stairs were slick, the scratches on the walls sharper, forming new words. See us. Know us. Stay. My name was there, the spiral symbol larger, its slash pulsing like a vein. The hum was deafening, a growl that shook my bones. We reached the corridor, the metal door wide open, the circular chamber glowing faintly. Our names were carved above the rusted chair, new words beneath. You are ours. The smaller hatch to the deeper stairs was open, its darkness alive with scraping sounds. But Sophie didn't head there. She turned to the control room passage, her movements mechanical, like she was being pulled. We followed, the narrow passage tighter, the walls wet with something that wasn't water. The symbols were denser now, spiraling into patterns that hurt to look at. The control room was the same, dusty panels, cracked buttons, dark monitors, but a new door stood at the far end, heavy and rusted, its surface etched with that spiral symbol. It was locked, a heavy bolt sealed with corrosion, but Sophie touched it, and it groaned like it wanted to open. We shouldn't, Ethan whispered, his flashlight trembling. It's a trap. It's the truth, Sophie said, her voice not her own. She pulled a knife from her pack, prying at the bolt. The metal screamed, and the door shuddered open, revealing a small circular chamber. The air was freezing, the stench overwhelming. Decay, chemicals, something preserved too long. Our flashlights caught glints of glass, rows of shelves lining the walls filled with jars. Dozens of them, cloudy and cracked, filled with something. Mia stepped forward, her breath hitching. What are these? She whispered, her beam illuminating a jar. Inside was a murky liquid, and floating within, a shape, too small, too wrong, like a distorted hand or face pressed against the glass. The label was faded, but I saw my name, Emma, scrawled in jagged script next to that spiral symbol. Oh God, Lucas said, his voice breaking. He aimed his flashlight at another jar labeled with his name. Inside, something twitched, a faint movement that made my stomach lurch. Ethan's name was on another, Mia's, Sophie's, each jar holding something that shouldn't be, something that looked alive but couldn't be. They're us, Sophie said, her voice calm, almost reverent. Parts of us. The hum surged, the air thick with voices now, chanting our names, overlapping in a chorus that wasn't human. You see us. You know us. You stay. My flashlight flickered and I saw it. A shadow in the corner, tall and thin, its edges blurred, its eyes glinting like the things in the jars. The voices grew louder, angrier, filling the chamber until my ears rang. Something moved in the jars, a faint ripple like they were waking up. We have to go, I shouted, grabbing Mia. But Sophie was still, staring at a jar with her name, its contents shifting, pulsing. Sophie, now! I yanked her arm, but the door slammed shut behind us, the bolt sliding back into place. The voices became screams, the shadow moving closer, its form clearer, limbs too long, a face like static, smiling. Our flashlights died, plunging us into darkness. The air was alive, the voices pressing against us, our names woven into their chant. I felt something brush my face, cold and wet like fingers from the jars. We pounded on the door, our screams lost in the chorus. Somehow it opened, and we ran through the control room, the passage, the chamber, the stairs. The walls pulsed with scratches, new words forming. You are ours forever. My spiral symbol glowed, its slash like a wound. We burst through the surface hatch. Collapsing in the dirt, the forest black, the stars gone. The hatch slammed shut, the ground shaking. At camp, our fire was dead, the air thick with that foul stench. Ethan was silent, his eyes vacant. Mia was shaking, her hands empty. Sophie sat apart, whispering to the jars we'd left behind. Lucas stared at the trees, his face pale. Those things in the jars, they weren't just preserved. They were us somehow, and they were still down there, waiting. What do you do when you find a piece of yourself that shouldn't exist? Chapter 8. The exit sealed behind us as the bunker woke up. Again, have you ever felt trapped? Not just by walls, but by something that knows you better than you know yourself. That's where we were in Blackwood Forest under that rusted hatch, in a bunker that wasn't just a place. It was alive and it wanted us. The voices, the jars with our names, the footage showing us before we arrived. They'd stripped us bare, left us raw and broken. We'd seen pieces of ourselves preserved in glass, things that shouldn't exist, and yet we kept going back, pulled by a force we couldn't resist. But this time, the bunker wasn't just watching. It was waking up. I'm Emma, barely holding what's left of our group. Me, Lucas, Mia, Ethan, and Sophie. Ethan was gone, not physically, but his mind. His eyes were empty, his whispers about the jars constant. Lucas was a ghost of his skeptical self, his hands clenched, his logic shattered by things he couldn't explain. Mia was frantic, her lost notebook a gaping wound, her mind racing to piece together the symbols she'd seen. Sophie was the worst. She moved like a shadow, her voice soft with words that weren't hers, her eyes fixed on something we couldn't see. And me? I was drowning in terror, but I had to keep us together, even if it was just to survive one more night. The forest was a prison now, the air thick with that sour, coppery stench, blood, rust, and decay, so strong it coated our throats. The pines loomed, their branches like skeletal hands, their shadows twisting into shapes that vanished when I blinked. We'd packed our gear for the 100th time, swearing to leave, but Sophie's voice stopped us, cold and certain. "It's not letting us leave," she said, staring at the path to the hatch. "It's awake now." "Awake?" Lucas snapped, his voice cracking. "It's a bunker, Sophie, not a person." "We're getting out of here." Mia shook her head, her hands shaking. "It's not just a bunker. The symbols, the voices, the jars, they're part of something bigger. It's alive." Ethan's voice was a whisper, barely audible. "It's got us." "It's got me. I saw my face in that jar." I wanted to scream, to drag them to the car, but that pull was a vice around my chest, dragging me back to the hatch. The bunker wasn't just alive, it was personal, like it had chosen us from the start. We trekked back, our flashlights flickering, the forest silent, the hatch waiting like a predator. The drag marks in the dirt were deeper, fresher, like something had crawled out while we were gone. The hinges screamed as we opened the hatch, the cold metallic air rushing up, thick with that burnt hair and blood stench. The concrete stairs were slick, the scratches on the walls pulsing with new words. "You are ours. Stay forever." My name was there, the spiral symbol larger, its slash glowing like a wound. The hum was louder, a growl that shook the air, like the bunker was breathing. We reached the corridor, the metal door wide open, the circular chamber glowing faintly. Our names were carved above the rusted chair, new words beneath. "You cannot leave." The smaller hatch to the deeper stairs was open, its darkness alive with scraping sounds. But Sophie didn't head there. She moved to the control room passage, her steps mechanical like she was being pulled. We followed, the narrow passage tighter, the walls wet with something that smelled like rot. The control room was the same, dusty panels, cracked buttons, dark monitors, but the door to the jar chamber was open, its stench seeping out. We didn't go there. Instead, Sophie stopped at a new panel, hidden behind a rusted grate. It was covered in symbols, the spiral prominent, and a single lever, heavy and corroded. "This is it," she said, her voice not her own. "This is what it wants. Don't touch it." Ethan shouted, his flashlight trembling. But Sophie's hand was already on the lever, pulling it with a groan. The hum surged, the air pulsing, and a new door slid open in the wall, a heavy, rusted slab etched with the spiral symbol. Beyond it was a staircase, narrower than the others, descending into a darkness our flashlights couldn't pierce. "We can't," I said, grabbing Sophie's arm. But the air shifted, the hum becoming a roar, and the voices returned, louder, angrier, chanting our names. "Emma, Lucas, Mia, Ethan, Sophie." They came from the stairs, the walls, the air itself, thick with that foul stench. The floor shook and the monitors flickered on, showing us standing at the new door, right now, in this moment, but with shadows behind us. Tall and thin, their eyes glinting, we descended, the stairs twisting deeper, the walls smooth and cold, etched with symbols that seemed to move. The air was freezing, the smell overwhelming, decay, chemicals, something alive but wrong. The voices grew louder, forming sentences. "You woke us. You stay." My flashlight caught a new carving. My name, the spiral symbol, and words. "Emma leads them down." The stairs ended in a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow, its walls lined with more jars, hundreds of them, their contents shifting, twitching. In the center was a platform, raised and circular, covered in symbols that pulsed like a heartbeat. Something lay there, wrapped in tattered cloth. Preserved far too long, human-shaped but wrong, its limbs too long, its surface glistening like it was still wet. "It's alive," Sophie whispered, stepping forward. The voices surged, the air thick with their chant. The thing on the platform twitched, its cloth shifting, revealing a face, not human, but familiar, like a distorted mirror of us all. My flashlight died, then Mia's, then Lucas's. Ethan's beam held, but it was weak, trembling. The door above slammed shut, the sound echoing like a gunshot. The hum became a scream, the voices deafening. "You are ours forever." The thing on the platform moved, sitting up, its eyes glinting, its mouth opening to speak our names. We ran, but the stairs were gone, the door sealed, the walls closing in. The scratches formed new words. No exit. My spiral symbol glowed, its slash like a scar. We pounded on the sealed door, our screams lost in the voices. Something brushed my back, cold and solid, like the thing from the platform. The air was alive, the bunker awake, its pulse shaking the ground. Somehow, the door gave way, and we scrambled up, through the control room, the chamber, the surface stairs. The hatch was open, but as we burst through, it slammed shut, the ground quaking. At camp, our fire was dead, the air thick with that coppery stench. Ethan was silent, Mia shaking, Sophie whispering to the thing we'd seen. Lucas stared at the trees, his face gray. The bunker wasn't just alive, it was awake, and we'd fed it. What do you do when you wake something that was never meant to live? Chapter 9. What crawled out of the lower levels? Knew our names already. Have you ever felt like something was following you, not just in the shadows, but inside your own mind? Something that knows you, your fears, your secrets, your name, better than you do. That's what we faced in Blackwood Forest, beneath that rusted hatch, in a bunker that wasn't just alive but awake, hungry and personal. The voices, the jars, the footage, the thing on the platform, they'd torn us apart, left us broken and raw. We thought we'd escaped when the sealed door gave way, but we were wrong. Something had followed us up, and it wasn't letting us go. I'm Emma, and I'm barely holding what's left of us. Me, Lucas, Mia, Ethan, and Sophie. Ethan was a ghost, his eyes vacant, his whispers about the thing in the chamber constant. Lucas's defiance was dead, his hands shaking, his face pale with something beyond fear. Mia was unraveling, her mind a maze of half-remembered symbols, her hands empty without her notebook. Sophie was gone. Her body was here, but her eyes saw something else, her voice soft with words that weren't human. And me? I was drowning in dread, but I had to keep us alive. Even if it was just for one more hour. The forest was a cage now. The air thick with that sour coppery stench, blood, rust, and decay so strong it clung to our skin. The pines loomed, their branches like claws, their shadows twisting into shapes that moved when we blinked. We sat around our dead campfire, too scared to move, too broken to speak. Sophie broke the silence, her voice low, not hers. "It's out," she said, staring at the path to the hatch. "It followed us." "Followed us?" Lucas snapped, his voice hoarse. "We closed the hatch, Sophie." "It's done." Mia shook her head, her hands trembling. "It's not done. The symbols, the voices, that thing, it's not trapped down there. It's here." Ethan's voice was a whisper, barely audible. "I saw it. In the chamber. It looked at me. It said my name." I wanted to run, to scream, to burn the forest down, but that pull was a chain around my heart, binding me to the hatch. The bunker wasn't just awake, it was hunting us. We didn't choose to go back. Our feet moved, our flashlights flickered, the forest silent, the hatch waiting like a wound in the earth. The drag marks in the dirt were fresh, too fresh, leading away from the hatch into the trees. We opened it, the hinges screaming, the cold metallic air rushing up, thick with that burnt hair and blood stench. The concrete stairs were slick, the scratches on the walls alive, forming new words. "We are here. You are ours." My name was there, the spiral symbol larger, its slash glowing like a pulse. The hum was gone, replaced by a low, wet scraping, like something crawling through the dark. We reached the corridor, the metal door wide open, the circular chamber glowing faintly. Our names were carved above the rusted chair, new words beneath. "We know you." The smaller hatch to the deeper stairs was open, its darkness alive with movement, slow, deliberate, climbing. The air was heavy, the stench overwhelming, like the bunker itself was rotting. Sophie led us to the control room passage, her steps mechanical, her eyes glassy. The narrow passage was tighter, the walls wet with something that smelled like death. The control room was the same, dusty panels, dark monitors, But the door to the jar chamber was open, its stench seeping out. The new door, the one to the lower chamber, was ajar, its spiral symbol glowing. The scraping was louder now, coming from below, steady and close. "We have to see," Sophie said, her voice not her own. She stepped toward the door, and we followed, our flashlights trembling. The stairs were narrower, the walls smooth and cold, etched with symbols that pulsed like veins. The air was freezing, the smell unbearable. Decay, chemicals, something alive but wrong. The scraping grew louder, and the voices returned, faint at first, chanting our names. Emma, Lucas, Mia, Ethan, Sophie. The stairs ended in the vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow, the jars on the shelves twitching, their contents moving. The platform was empty, the tattered cloth gone, but the floor was wet, glistening with something dark. The voices grew louder, forming sentences. "We know you. We see you." My flashlight caught a shape in the corner, tall, thin, its limbs too long, its face a blur of static, but its eyes glinted, fixed on us. "It's here," Ethan whispered, his flashlight dropping. The shape moved, crawling across the wall, its movements jerky, like a spider, but wrong. It spoke, its voice a mix of the voices we'd heard, low and wet. "Emma, you led them." I froze, my heart pounding, the spiral symbol on the wall glowing brighter. Lucas shouted, swinging his flashlight, but it flickered out. The thing crawled closer, its limbs scraping the concrete, its face shifting, showing glimpses of us. My eyes, Mia's mouth, Ethan's fear. "Lucas, you doubt," it said, its voice curling around his name. Mia screamed, backing away, as the jars on the shelves shook, their contents banging against the glass. "We have to go," I shouted, grabbing Sophie. But the thing was faster, blocking the stairs, its body filling the space, its eyes glinting. The voices surged, deafening. "You are ours. You stay." My flashlight died, then Mia's, then Ethan's. Sophie's beam held, but it was weak, trembling. The thing reached out, its fingers cold and wet, brushing my face, whispering my name. We ran, shoving past it, its touch like ice. The stairs seemed endless, the walls pulsing with scratches. No escape. The thing followed, its scraping echoing, its voice chanting our names. The chamber door was open, but as we reached the corridor, it slammed shut, the sound shaking the bunker. The air was alive, the voices screaming, the thing's claws scraping closer. Somehow we reached the surface stairs, our lungs burning, our flashlights gone. The hatch was open, but as we burst through, it slammed shut, the ground quaking. We collapsed in the dirt, the forest black, the stars gone. The drag marks led into the trees, and I swore I saw it, a shadow, tall and thin, watching from the pines. At camp, our fire was dead, the air thick with that coppery stench. Ethan was silent, Mia sobbing, Sophie whispering to the thing that followed us. Lucas stared at the trees, his face gray. That thing, it wasn't just from the bunker. It was us somehow, and it knew us better than we knew ourselves. What do you do when something crawls out of the dark and calls you by name? Chapter 10, Escaping the Bunker, meant carrying its curse into the world above. Have you ever escaped something only to realize it's still with you, clinging like a shadow you can't shake? That's what happened to us in Blackwood Forest after we climbed out of that cursed bunker beneath the rusted hatch. The voices, the jars, the thing that crawled out of the lower levels, they'd broken us, stripped us of everything but fear. We thought reaching the surface was the end, but the bunker wasn't done. It had marked us, and what we brought back wasn't just memories. It was something worse. I'm Emma, or what's left of me, trying to hold together the fragments of our group. Me, Lucas, Mia, Ethan, and Sophie. Ethan was barely human, his eyes vacant, his whispers about the thing that knew his name unending. Lucas's defiance was gone, his face gray, his hands trembling like he could still feel its touch. Mia was shattered, her mind a tangle of symbols she couldn't unsee, her hands empty without her notebook. Sophie was lost, her body here but her soul elsewhere, whispering words that weren't hers. And me? I was drowning. The spiral symbol burned into my mind, its slash like a scar on my heart. The forest was a graveyard now, the air thick with that sour, coppery stench, blood, rust, and decay so strong it coated our lungs. The pines were silent, their branches like bones. their shadows twisting into shapes that watched us. We sat around our dead campfire, too broken to move, too scared to speak. The drag marks from the hatch led into the trees, and Sophie's voice, low and wrong, broke the silence. "It's not over," she said, her eyes fixed on the darkness. "We brought it with us." "Brought what?" Lucas snapped, his voice raw. "We're out, Sophie. It's done." Mia shook her head, her hands shaking. "It's not done. The symbols, the voices, that thing, it's in us now. We're carrying it." Ethan's voice was a whisper, barely audible. "It knows me. It's still here. I feel it." I wanted to scream, to run, to burn the forest and the hatch and everything it had done to us. But that pull was gone, replaced by something heavier, like a weight inside my chest. The bunker hadn't let us go. It had sent us out, marked, changed. We stumbled to the car, our flashlights dead, the forest too quiet, the stars gone. The hatch was closed, but the drag marks were everywhere, circling our camp, leading into the shadows. We drove in silence, the road winding through the pines, the air still thick with that foul stench. The radio crackled, spitting static, and for a moment I heard it, our names whispered in that same wet, inhuman voice. "Emma. Lucas. Mia." I turned it off, my hands shaking, but the silence was worse. Lucas gripped the wheel, his knuckles white. Mia stared out the window, her eyes reflecting symbols that weren't there. Ethan rocked back and forth, muttering. Sophie was still, her whispers soft, like she was answering something in the dark. Back in the city, we thought we'd be safe. The lights, the noise, the people, it should have grounded us. But the bunker followed. At night, I saw the spiral symbol in my dreams, its slash pulsing like a heartbeat. Shadows moved in my apartment, tall and thin, their edges blurred. The air smelled of rust and decay, and I heard it, breathing slow and heavy, where no one stood. My mirror showed glimpses of a face that wasn't mine, its eyes glinting, its mouth forming my name. Lucas called me, his voice shaking. He'd found scratches on his walls, his name carved in jagged lines, the spiral symbol beside it. Mia was worse. She'd started drawing again, covering her walls with symbols, muttering about a story we couldn't escape. Ethan wouldn't answer his phone, but his neighbor said he hadn't left his apartment, just sat in the dark, whispering to something that wasn't there. Sophie was the worst. She'd vanished, leaving a note. "It's calling me back." Her apartment was empty, but the air smelled of burnt hair and blood, and her mirror was cracked, the spiral symbol etched into the glass. I went to check on her, my heart pounding. Her place was cold, the air heavy, like the bunker. In her bedroom, I found a jar, cloudy, cracked like the ones below. Inside was something small, twitching, labeled with my name. I dropped it, the glass shattering, the thing inside scuttling into the shadows. The voices came then, loud and clear. "You are ours. You brought us." I ran, but the shadows followed, their shapes tall and thin, their eyes glinting in the dark. We met up, the four of us, in a diner, hoping the light would keep it at bay. But the air was wrong, the smell of rust and decay seeping in. The other customers didn't notice, but we did. Their faces blurred for a moment, showing glimpses of that thing, its static smile. The waitress called my name, her voice not her own, and I saw the spiral symbol on her notepad, its slash like a wound. "We can't stay here," Lucas said, his voice breaking. "It's everywhere." Mia nodded, her hands trembling. "The symbols, they're not just in the bunker. They're in us. We're the story now." Ethan was silent, his eyes fixed on something behind me. I turned, but nothing was there, just a shadow, fleeting, its eyes glinting. The voices whispered, faint but clear, "You carry us." We left the diner, the city feeling like the forest, the air thick, the shadows alive. We tried to fight it. We burned our clothes from the trip, scrubbed our skin raw, but the stench clung. We avoided mirrors, but the symbols appeared. On walls, in dreams, on scraps of paper we didn't remember writing. The voices grew louder, chanting our names, telling us to return. I found Sophie's note in my pocket. Though I'd never taken it, the words changed. "Emma leads them back. I don't know how to end this. We're not free. The bunker didn't trap us below. It sent us out, carrying its curse. The thing that crawled out knows us, lives in us, watches through our eyes. Every shadow, every mirror, every quiet moment, it's there, whispering our names. We thought we escaped, but we brought it with us, into the world above. What do you do when you're the curse?